So why don't you kick us off, Leonie?
Hi, I'm Leonie from Tasmania, and I've only been having lessons over the last year. Very privileged to have Louise come down and give us a hand last year. It was brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, that's when we met down in Tassie when I came down for that festival. Is that happening every year, Leonie?
Usually I don't know what's happening this year.
Okay,
So
great. And
we've
tell us a
started,
little bit about your background in terms of you love working in groups. You obviously don't just play cello, you play other instruments, string instruments. Is that right?
violin would be my main instrument, but since some health issues have meant that it's probably better for me to play cello.
Well, there you go. It is the most supreme, fabulous instrument, of course, even if I am a little bit biased, but it's wonderful to have you on the call.
Thank
And why
you.
don't we go to lovely Rebecca? Would you want to just talk us a little bit about your context and your cello background?
I'm Rebecca and I live in Brisbane. I've been with Louise's classes this is my third year now. I went in the beginners class first, obviously, then intermediate, and now we've just had our first intermediate class for this year. A few of the oldies and a couple of newbies, and it has, as Louise always desires, that we have got a little bit of a community going and friendships forming and groups that practice together, Leonie. So yeah, I'm really loving it. It is the most beautiful instrument. I totally agree, Louise.
It is.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm back for more.
Woohoo! Well, it's wonderful to have you in the group, particularly that intermediate stream. And why don't we say hi to Pam? Oh, you just need to unmute yourself, lovely Pam. It's okay. You were in full flight and I could see you talking, but it might be just working out where your unmute is. If not, I can try and...
How's that?
Okay.
Good?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm Pam and I'm in Koroiva, which is about 10 minutes north of Noosa, Queensland. And I'm repeating the beginners year this year, as I missed quite a bit of last year with lots of things happening. But I'm looking forward to getting some traction with it this year, and I'm doing the boot camp next Sunday, Lou.
Yeah, I'm excited. I saw your name on that list. Fantastic.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
In-depth fundamentals.
Yeah.
And of course, something I talk about is, of course, what I've done is stream beginner, intermediate, and advanced classes. But actually, in a beginner, that could be anything from someone who's total fresh newbie all the way up to kind of, say, grade 2 level cello A&E, which is actually a very wide range of skill sets. And of course, that's why it's multi-level and it's pick your own adventure. So it is very common in an adult space, actually, to see people staying more often than not, within that beginner stream, because there's a huge amount of work that has to be done to get the body coordinated, the brain thinking. There's just so many reasons we need to do it, but it can take a little bit of time to get that traction and to find your own flow and actually find where your ceiling is, actually. So I'm just checking we've not got anyone else kind of coming in. People always go, you didn't let me in, but I'm just making sure. Yeah. Okay. So I reckon what's happened is people do that usual thing of, let's just book and then I'll just watch the replay. So I think that might be what's happening. So lovely ladies in the Zoom room at the moment, how do you feel about me putting this onto the Facebook learning group, the private group we have going for cello dreaming learners, which are 80% really beginners to intermediate stream at this point. It's only a group of 170 people, but it just means that we can actually just keep this momentum going, and there might be some topic of relevance to one of them. And what's important here is actually we've got 3 different kind of levels represented on the screen. We've actually got Leonie, who's a very seasoned community musician, does a lot of work in community orchestras, and really active learner, very regularly attending rehearsals every week. And then we've got obviously Rebecca, who's in the intermediate stream in the class program, doing a lot of work on her own with her own teacher, and a good program there. And of course, Pam, who's kind of joining in the beginner stream. So in actual fact, there might be 3 different ways we can go here. So to kind of organize ourselves with the time we have left, I want to kind of think a little bit about what topics you might have. So if there's something on the top of your mind, I'm literally about to write it down, and we'll kind of just have a general discussion. It's a small enough gathering for us to do that. And then what we'll do, so we don't get too much kind of background noise, is while I'm talking, we might just mute you three, and then I'll invite us to do kind of more discussion points. Does that make sense? But seeing as Pam's open at the moment, Pam, what kind of topic or questions might you have for this session?
I guess since I'm repeating this year and I didn't get to do very much with my cello at all in the last 3 months of last year, I'm remembering that I was having some issue with the bowing, just how to prevent the bow from touching other strings, like adjacent strings.
Great, that's a community question. And I'm sure already both of these other cellists on the Zoom call might have some tips. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm just writing these down. So what I'm going to get you to do, Pam, is just if you could back onto mute, because otherwise we'll get some background sound. Thanks, Pam. So Rebecca, what kind of topic would you like me to open up for you?
I'm not sure if it's relevant for everybody. It's just me.
Okay, don't worry. That's why this is what it's about. It's a kind of pick your own adventure Zoom chat. So let's see where you're thinking.
Just I think ways of practicing so that I get more I don't know what the word is, just knowledge of which fingering I should use in different positions when you're changing strings.
Have you got a particular piece in mind? Or is it just more, how do you actually construct fingering patterns? Is that what I'm hearing?
Bach Cello Suite, the Prelude.
Okay, because that's very different depending on the style of music you're looking at, a whole different level of things. Okay, so what I'm hearing there is like, how do you create finger patterns in essence? Yes, regardless of style. Okay, great. And of course, the specific piece you're thinking about is the Bach Prelude. Fantastic, thank you. And Leonie, we'll just put you on mute, Rebecca, thank you. How can I help you this evening, Leonie?
Well, first of all, I've never done a Zoom meeting before.
Well, already you're brave. Hooray!
I was totally terrified.
It's not scary. You know me already, and you know how warm and friendly I am. You've been in my sessions one-to-one, so it's all good.
Wonderful. So, and I didn't know what we'd be doing or how we're doing it. So it's a learning thing for me. I also catch other strings with my bow, as you know. Yeah. I might have a music background, but I'm fairly new to cello.
Yeah.
I have one particular question about one particular bar in a piece that we were sight reading at orchestra last night.
Right.
I'm not sure what fingering to use. I thought, well, one bar you might be able to.
Great. So I'm going to get you to do something really tech savvy. Do you have a phone with you? And can you take a quick screenshot or a photo image of that bar? Because I will.
Well, I can if I turn you off.
Oh, I see. Oh, is your wonderful husband there? He can take a quick photo.
Oh, he's not here. Bar 1.
You have to go a bit closer for me. Yeah, I'm going to need you to take that as an image.
Okay. So the first note is an A on the G string.
Yeah.
And then there's a semiquaver rest. And then there's a G sharp A as 3 semiquavers.
So I'm a visual learner. If you quickly just maybe turn me off and then come back on, take a picture of it, send it to me on my phone. I'll give you my phone number right now. And then you're going to text it to me on my phone and I can see it. That's how I do a lot of it with my students. I kind of zoom in and out.
Sure. Okay.
And then I'll go back to Pam's question, then I'll go to Rebecca's question, and then I'll go to you. So what you need to do is zoom on off, take a quick photo of that section. I will be able to answer it very quickly. Then you don't have to dictate what it is. And then I hopefully will be able to open that. And that might actually connect to what Rebecca's asking me as well. So do you have my phone number?
I'm just writing, I got a pen ready.
Here you go. 0415
0415
128
128
799.
799.
Yeah.
Be back
Get
shortly.
hand on that image, and then I'll
Okay.
fix that very quickly for
Be
you.
back
So
shortly.
we'll bye and see you in a second when you come back on.
Oh,
All right.
wow.
So let's go to Pam's question. I'm just going to go into gallery view for me. So Pam's question, which was all about why do I keep hitting other strings? If you look at the actual closeness of the strings on the bridge, it is very common. And do you remember me confirming in last year's classes that if you were learning, for example, in Ireland, you would sit on 2 strings as a drone for a very long time until you establish your weight. So what we're asking a lot of string players to do is equivalent of like learning how to bike with like all the weight on one side, right? Or like with no stabilizers. So it is very common to see people hit strings. So my question for you to kind of tunnel down into this is, where are you noticing it the most? So is it all the way through your playing, or is it on a certain string? For example, when you're on the A string, are you hitting the D string? Can you kind of help me understand a little bit more where it's happening?
So I think it's D and G. So it's at the high point where I'm going across. And
so tip of the bow?
Yeah.
Moving across. Yeah. But also that makes sense, right? If I get my bow out, you'll see what I mean. It's the longest part of the arm.
Mm.
So much of this movement, right, is to do with understanding how much movement do we need to do. But also there's 2 angles. If you're right at the tip of the bow, you also need to be kind of coming around to the A string. So this is where I am on the A. This is where I am on the D. This is the G, and this is the C. So there's all these different angles that happen.
Okay.
Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a little technique for you to try is actually just sitting at the tip of the bow, placing it right on a string. This is an imaginary string, so you can see it. And then just check, can you pivot all the way around the string? And actually there should be a lot of movement in this arm. If I turn myself around, this is how it feels when I'm playing the cello. This is my C string angle. This is my A string angle. Can you see there is a massive difference? It looks like...
Yeah, I'm sure I'm not doing that.
Rowing. Do you see what I mean?
Mm.
So this is D and G, really nice and central in the body. But to get to the C string, I have to pull it towards me this way to actually kind of make it straight. To go to the A string, that's what's happening. Okay. So you might actually want to have it in different pivot points, just like if we go on kayak or an old-fashioned rowing boat. So I often would sit with my bow silently on the string and just do some kayaking, some rowing movements. And what will happen underneath the bow hair, because you've got weight on the string, is a little bit like a kind of gristly sound. It's a bit like squeaking and squawking sound. And actually that's what you want. You want that connection, that pivot point. But a lot of people don't realize that when you're in action, you've actually got to be doing all these preparation movements to get up to all these different strings. So what I would be suggesting, if you're on the D and G and you're moving over, just check you've kind of paused, you reposition, and then start your new bow. So most people think it should happen all the way, but for me to actually learn how to string cross, because this is actually about a string crossing question, I had to pause, think, move, now reset. So it's like the equivalent of us changing lanes on the motorway.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll practice.
There are lots of separation movements, and I'm reckoning that you just haven't got that flexibility here, or the angle alignment happening. So my question for you is, do you play in front of a mirror?
No, I play here, where I'm sitting facing my computer screen.
You have a long mirror?
I do.
Active surface, often, for example, late at night, in a kind of big, tall window, you can see yourself. The entire first 5 years of my learning, I played in front of a mirror or in a dance studio. At the Royal College of Music, that's where we had our lessons. So I had a 360-degree, as a student, view of what was going on. No one would learn to dance without knowing what's going on behind them. You need to actually know what's going on in all the different angles for you. And my suggestion, Pam, would be, if you don't want to do it that way in front of a mirror, because that requires memory or working away from music, just put your phone on your actual string. So your phone on the tripod, really low, just really analysing what's going on in what we call the point of contact. Because, of course, this is a very long tool, and you have to have a significant amount of different angles going on.
Yeah.
But here it's very easy to control because it's very close. Further away, much more likely all of this arm has to be parallel with the bow stick. Does that make sense?
I'm pretty sure I'm not having that range of movement.
No, most people don't, because most people don't realise that we play the whole instrument with our whole arm and our whole body. Remember my first teacher, particularly Daisy, she was an Alexander technique teacher, and also she was a retired ballerina. So her entire movement focus work was about taking the bow out of my hand and actually doing the kind of shapes I needed, and then putting the bow back in my hand and then just checking it was actually working. But I don't worry if you hit 2 strings as a beginner. It's actually very comfortable, and actually it means that you kind of got good grip. And I haven't noticed that as a concern for me. And actually Celtic music uses it all the time. It's called a drone. We will need to be playing 2 strings at the same time. It's called a double stop. Yeah, and all folk music uses it. But just check in with either shoulder, arm, elbow. Everything should be naturally aligned. So if you're feeling like a block somewhere, just try and stretch your arm out and see what's going on. But you need to actually put your video on your own arm or look at it, because that's the only way you're going to be able to solve the problem.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
That's been helpful. I'm going to see if there's anyone else who's got some other tips there. What about Rebecca? How to avoid hitting 2 strings at the same time?
Well, it's a far cry from being a ballerina, but if you... Sorry, that's our garage door. But if you wanted to relate that, so it looks a little bit like a backhand tennis shot. In a way, so you're sort of following through.
Yeah, exactly. Follow through. There's all these subtle movements that happen. I still haven't got your lovely photo yet, Leonie.
Oh, I sent it.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Oh, sorry, I took it and I sent it.
That's all right. Just double check. And of course, you're going from Tassie to Queensland. Maybe it's gone up to somewhere very funny to come back down. But I reckon, Pam, that's a great topic to kick us off for beginner class 2, because beginner class 2 is about bow holds, beginner 101. Have you jumped into the drive and seen all my kind of the worst bow holds ever kind of page? In the fundamental section, there's a really fantastic kind of couple of pages with photos of like some really weird kind of bow holds going on, and you know, things that everyone does and then goes, why does it not work? You know, so check that out. It's in the drive for you to kind of A, have a bit of a laugh at, and B, go, actually, is one of these my bow holds? So that might be one of the reasons why it's not working.
Yeah, all right. Yeah? Okay, cool. I must admit, but holding it just feels so foreign, doesn't it? Just because it's heavy and it's so long.
Yeah,
and you're holding
so hold it higher up. Balance, you know, Baroque style. Just hold it where it's really nice and easy and light, and then we can start to move you down. But I played here for several years, and when I play Baroque cello, I play with an early bow here. This is how a lot of us will play early music. It's much easier. If I was working with any injured hand, I'd go to a small bow, balance point, and we just work through the injury by rehabilitating the hand in that way. Yeah, it is heavy, and you're not meant to have the stamina yet.
Cool. All right. All right. Thank you for that.
Have faith. The bow hold is worth it, isn't it, Rebecca and Leonie? Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Go for it. It's our most amazing tool. So thanks for that question. We're going to move on to lovely Rebecca's question, which was a totally different aspect of our playing, which is how to sort out fingering choices. Now I'm going to go really specific first, and then I'm going to zoom us out. So Bach and early music, Vivaldi, anything which is a Baroque composer will require you to generally play with lots of open strings for open resonance. So you don't want to be doing a lot of moving into complicated patterns. And actually, if there is an open string, I encourage you to use it. An open D and a G and an A is good in Baroque music. However, if you're playing a later composer, it's not so. You would actually have more kind of up and down the string patterns. But Bach prelude that you're talking about is generally chordal. It's working across the strings, yeah? All of that kind of expressive playing, very fast string crossings. But you will be generally either using a first, a second, a third, or fourth position in Baroque music, yeah? And there are some moments where you're going to need, for a C sharp, for example, to move up into a higher position, such as second position or third position, just like a guitarist would have to go down the neck. Yeah. And that's to make it under the hand. So the kind of arpeggio figure sits and can be played in that area while the bow does all the wiggly wobbly kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Rebecca?
Yes, sorry, I just nodded.
That's all right.
That's all right. Yep.
And the other thing is, depending on people's ability and flexibility and knowledge of positions, and that's a long story, basically, depending on how much work you've done and how quick you can shift with precision, I wouldn't be shifting you unnecessarily. So, you know, stay in the kind of comfort zone of first position. If in doubt, stay there. If you need to move, because there's a C sharp, move higher. But that wouldn't be applied to any other style of music other than Baroque, okay? But the idea of the Bach prelude or anything like fingering choices is to do with the context you're playing. So style is actually the first thing. What's the composer? Does it need vibrato? Does it need slides? No, that's not needed in Bach, so that's why we're not going there. And of course, fingering choices are very personal because, again, it's about what feels comfortable, what feels right. So, for example, some people love shifting 4/4. Some people hate it because it's the weakest finger. Some people love doing what we call replacement shifts, which is 2/1 or 2/3, where it's the same sound but different fingers in that combination. So I think what happens with teaching is we tend to work with the student and we kind of bespoke a finger pattern, which is probably what your teacher's already doing. But there are some very short hacks to some areas in that Bach prelude, which I'm sure your teacher has probably already started to introduce you to. Yeah?
Well, I haven't reached the point where they're doing the descending scales, or not that, where the descending scales.
End of the prelude, yeah, which is a chromatic scale. Yes. Yeah. So if you know a chromatic pattern, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you can basically kind of work your way through that. But the second page is much harder than the first page. Most people can play the first 2 lines of the Bach prelude and are generally quite happy with that. But actually, the rest.
I wish it ended there. Actually,
why it's, you know, basically the first 3 lines are about grade 2 level cello. But after line 3, you're talking grade 4, grade 5. Second page is grade 6, grade 7, which is the reason why it's a grade 7 A B level piece. Most people know it because it's really famous. We as artists make it look easy. It's not. And that's why you have to just kind of keep chunking away and do the bits that you can. And I often suggest with someone who's aspiring to play the Bach prelude, hop over the bits that you don't know or circle them and go to a lesson as a student, go, how do you put fingerings in for just this 4 bars for me? Because otherwise you can spend wax lyrical for 10 hours just on the first couple of lines, yeah? Which most people can figure out for themselves. But what you're going to need is a finger pattern. So next time you go into a lesson, one-to-one, go, can you please put some fingering in for these 2 zones I'm really struggling with? And then I want you to trust that finger pattern. Whoever's given it to you has obviously done the thinking, done the practicing, had a way of doing it. It might not be my way of doing it. It might not be another cellist's way of doing it. But what learners then need to do is apply it. And then you need to sit with that for at least 6 weeks of regular practice before you're really going to start to go, oh, that's starting to work. Most people don't trust that and practice it enough for it to kind of start to click into place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
And most people need to play it slower to hear all those shifts first. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. Don't worry, it's about less than half speed.
Yes. And of course, what's difficult about learning as an older person is that our body is not as flexible and as mobile. We might hear it in our ear, but our body will take a little longer to move to that space. And I think just stay in a speed that feels comfortable and easy for anything that you're doing. And just keep incrementally increasing the speed on your metronome. So basically, fingering patterns are a very long story, and we tend to have a kind of very clear way of doing it as a teacher because we practiced it that way. But what I would always encourage my students to do, my philosophy is this. This is how it works for me, but my hand, Beck, is going to be completely different to yours. So you also have to experiment, and you have to experiment and go, at least can I find an option A and an option B for the same passage? Every single phrase, anywhere in any piece of music, should and could be possible to be played 2 or 3 different ways. So that's the kind of thinking. Oh, I could have an option A, or I can have an option B. And give yourself a suite of choices rather than there is only one way. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you very much.
So take a picture of it next time and we can maybe open that in a class. And I did get your photo. All right, moving on to lovely Leonie. Thank you. I can see it now. Okay, fingering choices. First finger on the very first note, Leonie. You're going to play a nice, strong, confident A in a first finger. Then you're going to quickly shift to a second finger on the A on the D string. So that will allow a finger 2 to have a G sharp underneath that semitone. So you've got 2, 1, 2, and then you've got to move across with your 4th finger for the second crotchet A. So you're actually in what we call upper third position.
Upper third.
2, 1, 2, 4. So the 4th finger A is on the C string. I'll just give you all the numbers, then you can write them above there.
I have.
Great, you're so quick. Now, the challenge of that pattern is that the second A crotchet will very likely be late. A, shift, 2, 1, 2, 4, because you've actually got to do this huge, great big move across to the C string.
Yes.
And
wildly
flickering. But that's the only way to play it.
Yes. Okay.
At speed. There is an option B. So I'm going to just model what I was saying with Rebecca.
Yep.
You could do this. Option B would be first finger, 4th finger on the A, 4, 3, 4, 1, back to the same first finger. So Rebecca, that's kind of giving you an indication that with only just 3 notes, actually there's another couple, but I'm just going to stay with A and B. And then you have to try those, Leonie, and see what feels most doable at speed and with comfort.
So you sight reading that last night. Sorry? How did I do it? Sight reading last night at orchestra.
Yeah.
I did first finger on the A, and then I did 3rd finger, 2nd finger, 3rd finger, zip back down to the 1st finger.
Yeah, which is also fine, because I mean that's okay. But I think again you found an option C. But I would be thinking 4, 3, 4, 1 because you're closer to the first finger. You can almost stretch it. Do you see what I mean?
Better. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's why I needed to ask. I knew it wasn't right.
That's all it was. I'm dropping my bow. And the other thing is the bow helps this. So down, shift. And as you're shifting, you're kind of also bringing your bow back into the heel of the area for your up, down, up. Yeah. So make sure on the rest, there's actually 2 very quick things to do. A retake and a shift. And it all at the same time.
Yep.
Which is why it's tricky.
Yeah. Yes.
But I think that's kind of moved on for Beck idea of how do you put fingerings in. There's actually always a multiplicity of choices. It's not like the recorder people. Does anyone remember getting tortured with that? Who? You know, there's basically like 2 options, if that, for the same sound.
Yes.
But we have 4 fingers to get around 7 octaves of music, and we will have to shift, which is why I say to all those wonderful beginners like Pam, don't stay in first position land for too long. There's many, 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 many wonderful explorations to go to. Yeah? And actually think about it, you can play any sound with any finger. I would love to see anyone play Happy Birthday with 1 finger on the Facebook private group. That's basically shifting what we naturally do with the hand. So there you go, people. Did that manage to, in 30 whizzy minutes, get 3 different topics sorted? So just to reflect, we had a question about bowing. Why do I hit other strings? You actually, Pam, don't need to be using a full bow yet. So mostly in beginner land, we might be using only half. Maybe just reduce the amount of bow you're using and actually see by reducing whether that's solved the problem. Easier to manage the angles. Then to reflect on Rebecca's question, it was like, how do I put some fingers in Bach prelude? That's a lot of information. Break it down into the very particular zones for your teacher and just chunk it up like that. We will all have different fingering patterns, but Baroque music needs more open strings than Romantic music because of the resonance. And of course, it's arpeggiated. So find things that sit under the fingers. And then to collect to Leonie's concept, it's like orchestra, suddenly, pow, sight reading. How on earth do I do this? It seems impossible. And yes, there's actually basically 3 options for you to play 4 notes. And you've got to try all of them to see what you can do at speed and cleanly and with a musical pow, because that's what that is all about, isn't it, that piece?
Yeah.
When are you performing that, Leonie?
Pardon?
When are you going to perform that?
We're practicing at Mount Noman.
Ooh. And is there a concert coming up for that particular orchestra?
I believe so, but it was our first rehearsal for the year.
Great. Well, enjoy, and hopefully see you all at another point. These are literally every month, 30-minute quick Zoom call. Hit me up with some topics, and that was a great thing to do. Basically, take a photo of something just before, send it to me on a phone, then I can quickly identify what the problem is if there's a particular passage in the music. You could try that for me next time, Beck, too. Okay? All right, time for dinner. Zooming on out.
Thank you, Lily.
Really good to see everybody. Speak soon, guys.
Bye.
Bye.